Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in, and down he goes again. Unbelievable! Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Episode 54, Mike. 54, we passed the halfway mark to 100, right?
Just about.
Just about. Thanks again, guys, for listening to the Last Round, episode 54. I'm Danny Z with my co-host Mike Shepard. Coming off this last month, we've had a very good selection of fights. What do you think, Mike?
Crazy. In my lifetime, I can't think of...
In your lifetime?
I think of a month as good as that since I've been a boxing fan, so... Blessed.
You're blessed.
Blessed.
You're blessed. But yeah, we had DAZN this past Saturday. We had a 360 card yesterday.
Golden Boy on Thursday.
You know,
the big fight week this week.
There is, yeah, especially this Saturday. I mean, can you really complain? I know we're always going to have complainers, especially with the social media age. But in terms of boxing content, can you really complain?
Just look at Twitter, Danny.
Just look at Twitter.
Everybody complains. That's all people do.
Just look at Twitter. But, joining us this week is another guest, probably the most knowledgeable guest in terms of the entire history of boxing that we've had up until this point, at least in my eyes. What do you think, Mike?
I would agree with that, yeah.
The editor-in-chief of The Ring magazine is also a color commentator. He commentated the 360 card yesterday in Hollywood, California, and also commentated the Golden Boy card last Thursday on DAZN in Indio, California. Dougie Fischer joins us this week. How you doing, Dougie?
Hey, Danny Z. Hey, Mike. How you guys doing?
I'm good. Busy. Never ending every week. So much boxing.
Yeah, it's super busy. It is, yeah. And then this past weekend was extremely busy for me. So if my voice sounds like it's hoarse or cracking up, it's because I've been talking too much, or maybe there's fires out here in Southern California, so maybe the air quality is so piss poor that's also contributing to it. But thanks for having me on regardless. And thanks for the kind words you said before I came on.
Oh, no problem. And then real quick, the fires, are you affected by them? We hope you're not.
Well, the air quality is it's not close enough to my house where we're getting an evacuation warning. But yeah, I mean it's not far. It's it's not that far, but we're not close enough to where we need to worry about relocating.
Okay, well that's good news. Hopefully, nothing comes close, but obviously we send our thoughts and prayers to the people who are affected, because living in California, that's what you got to deal with. But as I mentioned earlier, Dougie, you commentated the DAZN Golden Boy card last Thursday, and obviously the 360 card yesterday in Hollywood.
That's probably the real reason my voice is hoarse. The commentating on the Golden Boy Thursday Night Fight show that was finally for the first time broadcast on DAZN. I'm out in the desert, so the air is kind of dry out there. But those broadcasts don't last more than 2 hours. But 360, those broadcasts are like 4 consecutive hours plus. And by, I can do 2 hours, 2.5, right around 3 hours, man, you just start to get delirious. You're just talking way too much, even when the action's good, and I have, partners like the Fleshing Flash, Kevin Kelly, and he can talk, and Cynthia Conte has boundless energy and all that kind of thing. But still, because it's a Facebook stream, one of the streams are Facebook, they have to be careful about copyright infringement.
Right.
So, the DJs at these club shows, and most boxing shows these days, they're playing music. They're playing copyrighted music between rounds. And if that gets out onto the stream, Facebook can flag them or stop the stream altogether or whatever. So the producer instructs us to talk between rounds. They don't have a microphone or anything in the corners for us to hear what the corner people have to say. But we have to keep talking. So we're talking 3 minutes during the round. And if it sounds like we're talking too much, that's by design. That's by direction from the producer. Hey, you guys got to talk over the sound of the music that's in the nightclub right now. So 4 hours plus, about 4 hours and 15 minutes of straight talking. your throat gets kind of sore.
Hey, well, seems like you're doing a good job to us because, we can't,
thank you.
So,
yeah, thank you.
It seems like a thin line to toe, especially with the whole copyright stuff. So we understand.
Yeah.
But, since you touched on the whole, since it was the inaugural broadcast for that Golden Boy card for DAZN last Thursday, because previously DAZN never broadcasted the fights. Do you know why that was an issue? Especially because Golden Boy always had like DAZN logos and everything on the advertisements.
I think when they first put the series out, it was just kind of like the developmental series, maybe like a step up from the I forgot the name of the club series, the
LA Fight Club.
LA Fight Club, there you go. So LA Fight Club is like, bringing up these guys from the 4 and 6 round level. And this was supposed to be a monthly. It's still kind of developmental. Maybe the guy, whoever's fighting in the opening bout, maybe they're still at the 6th round level, but they're moving into the 8 round level. And then the co-main event and the main event, that was supposed to be like solid 10 round level professionals. They're very mature prospects, ready to make that step into contender status, or they're actually contenders. And in the case of this past Thursday, they're 12 round fighters. They're world title holders or former world title holders, as we had in the main event and the co-main event. But when the series was initially started, it was just supposed to be a monthly Golden Boy series that would run on local cable affiliates and be streamed live on Ring TV platforms and Golden Boy platforms. And DAZN came in. DAZN underwrote it. DAZN put some money to help the series out. So they were a title sponsor, but by having DAZN as a title sponsor, that confused people. They just assumed that it was going to be streamed on DAZN, which is understandable.
Mm-hmm.
If it's Thursday night fights and it says DAZN by it, like, oh, I'm going to tune into DAZN. So I guess kind of had to work that out, and maybe it made sense that this past Thursday's show worked for DAZN, A, because the main event was a world title bout, and B, because in the co-featured bout and in the main event were two fighters, Elwin Soto and Angel Acosta, who fought a main event, or actually I think it was a co-main event on DAZN earlier this year. I think it was in June that the junior flyweight title thriller happened, where we had the controversial final round.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it made sense to finally move it over there. But I'm glad they do, because DAZN immediately archives the fight. So if you miss it live, you can go to the DAZN platform and you can watch the fights, and you can hear my call along with Jonathan the Coachman and Beto Duran as the roving reporter and post-fight interview reporter. And it's good. The series has been good. There've been a fair amount of upsets. There's been the matchmaking has been very good. So obviously I want it to be on the widest possible platform, because if not, fans are missing out.
Absolutely. And then I did want to ask your take on because you mentioned Jonathan Coachman, because obviously yourself and then Beto Duran and the others have been around boxing for quite a while, and the coach is coming into this sport as like a type of color commentator, of course. What do you think of the job he's done so far?
I think he's excellent. He's the consummate professional. He's got the energy. He's got the voice. He has the command and the experience. He spent 20 years with the WWE. He basically learned the ropes of broadcasting while with Worldwide Entertainment. I'm sorry, I don't even know what is it? What is that acronym for?
Wrestling.
World Wrestling Entertainment.
Right.
It used to be WWF. That's right. Last time I followed professional wrestling, it was WWF.
In the 90s, yeah, I get
it. Their production value is second to none. And so he's a stickler. Like he keeps the producers on their P's and Q's, and the director on his P's and Q's, and he kind of lives up to that nickname, the coach, because he's always coaching everybody around him, and he understands his role. I mean, he's not color commentator really. He is, Beto is there to give us the background, the human interest stories behind, the story behind the ring of everyone who fights on that series. And I'm the boxing analyst. I'm the boxing nerd. I'm the hardcore boxing fan type guy. And Coach, he's the broadcast professional. He's the host, really. He's the guy who welcomes in the audience, and he navigates the broadcast. He's the blow-by-blow guy, but he's really there just to guide everybody through those 2 hours. And he's really into the fight. He's not an expert. He doesn't know who's who or where they're ranked, but that's what I'm there for. And so he throws to me, and so we complement each other in that way. You know, he comes from the general sports background, and I'm the 100% hardcore focused boxing aficionado. You know, I'm an absolute geek for the sport.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you guys are all different puzzle pieces there, working in a cohesive unit, so it's working out.
I think it works. Yeah, I think it works out. You know, of course, you know, the bottom line, the fights have to be good, and that's to me, that's the most important thing. Is that if there's a prospect or somebody who's supposed to be a contender, somebody you know who's got an upward trajectory, they're going to be tested. We're gonna learn how good they are. If they're ultra talents, we're going to see that talent on display, but we're also going to see the intangibles put to test. We're going to see their character and their mettle tested. And some guys have gotten through, you know, barely, like Romero-Duno. He had a hard time when he was in the main event. He fought a guy who had upset Mercito Hesta, who was a fringe contender, trying to get back into contender status, and he got stopped late, and that was the first show in March. We saw Jason Quigley, who was unbeaten. You know, he was an amateur standout, an Irish kid with a, you know, good-looking guy who's athletic. If you see him in the gym, he looks like a future world beater. But for whatever reason, he hasn't always put it together as a professional. And he was sorely tested by Toriano Johnson, a former contender who was just hard as nails. And he was too much for Jason Quigley. And that was the main event. And Quigley was a tremendous odds betting favorite. And he wound up being stopped before the final round. And the fight needed to be stopped probably before that point. And we've had a lot of other fights like that. And if there wasn't an outright upset, we had a guy from Argentina who was a two-time Olympian, and one of these extremely experienced amateur fighters that was on a fast track as a professional. And he was put in with this guy from Tijuana. Didn't have the most impressive record. Had 2 losses on his record, I believe, but had been training with Joel Diaz in the Coachella, Indio area for about a year. And he just came ready, and he pressed the Argentine fighter hard for 10 rounds. Argentine fighter fought back, but was, you know, pretty much outworked and lost the decision. So we have our upsets, and then we just have our good, hotly contested fights. Like we had the rematch between the 2 guys from Canada, Yves Ulysse Jr. and Steve Claggett. And that was just a quality 10-round junior welterweight bout.
You know, Dougie, I'm glad that you mentioned, you know, Quigley and you know, Duno and stuff. You know, all these obviously are in the Golden Boy stable.
Yeah.
Mike and I were having this conversation a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about different prospects, especially from the last couple years. And I wanted to ask you about where would you think, if he was still dedicated and in boxing, where do you think Frankie Gomez would be right now?
You know, he'd at the very least be a contender. You know, the last time he fought, he looked really good. I think he shut out Mauricio Herrera, and then he disappeared. But you know, the problem with Gomez is he never had the heart for boxing. He was never into boxing. He never liked to train, and he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Just not a bright guy. Never really surrounded himself with right folks. You know, so he was just, you know, it's wasted talent because he was a natural fighter. And he was, I mean, he had the chin. He was very heavy-handed. He had kind of a unique style. He could switch hits, and he moved well, and brute strong. He's durable. I mean, those are, you know, you have a lot of guys who are amateur standouts, as Gomez was. He was a national champion, and I believe he got a silver medal in the maybe it was the World Amateur Championships, and at a very young age, like maybe he was 19 years old. You know, Quigley was the same way. Quigley was like a European amateur champion, multiple national champion, And I think he got a silver medal in the World Amateur Championships, which is a big deal. I mean, it doesn't have the prestige of the Olympics, but the competition is basically the same. So if you can medal as a World Amateur Champion, that lets people know you're a blue chip amateur at the very least. And when you turn pro, people look at you like a blue chip prospect. The same way that Shakur Stevenson has panned out. He proved himself as an amateur, and he just had the look as soon as he turned pro. And when he finally worked his way up to the position of being in a title fight, he shined brightly, and that's what people expect from these guys. But you still have to have a chin. You still have to have durability. I don't know if Quigley has it. Or if you don't have a rock solid chin and the physical durability of a Frankie Gomez, well, then you have to have the kind of talent, athleticism, and technique that Shakur Stevenson has, where you can protect your chin. So, Gomez was gifted. He had that. Jason Quigley, I'm not so sure. Gomez had that. He had those intangibles of the chin and the durability. And once the fight started, he was all in, even if he had a poor camp. But he was just one of these guys who never liked to train, gave all of his trainers and his managers headaches, drove everybody crazy. And the sad thing is he being somebody from East LA, Oscar De La Hoya and the folks from Golden Boy took an immediate interest in him because he's kind of, he's a homeboy, and they wanted to have a homegrown champion. That's, one of the things that Oscar wants to do with his company. But there's these great trainers out here, and Gomez trained with Abel Sanchez up in Big Bear. People thought being up in Big Bear would help his discipline. No, it didn't. He trained with Freddie Roach, a Hall of Famer, and maybe he would show up once a week during a camp, getting ready for these big fights. And he was put onto huge platforms like HBO pay-per-view and HBO, and oftentimes he wouldn't even make weight, and his fight would get scratched. So he's just, honestly, I think he's a lost cause. But if you're talking about tremendous waste of talent, yeah, Gomez is up there along with Francisco Bojado. There was another local product who was, I believe he was an Olympian. Trying to think of his name. What was that dude's name? I think he was he actually made the 2000 Olympic team, but he got kicked off of it because he got arrested and convicted for forgeries and stuff like that. He had some kind of fraud ring going on where he was, counterfeiting checks and crap like that, But you're going to have guys like that.
Absolutely. And then, you mentioned Shakur, who obviously just had a fight this Saturday against Joet Gonzalez. But we wanted to touch on the fight that happened earlier in the day, at least over here in the States. It was obviously a 50-50 fight. It was very competitive between Regis Prograis and Josh Taylor in a unification bout. Have you been able to catch the entire fight? Did you catch the entire fight live? What's your takeaways?
I watched it live, and then I watched the first half of it again because watching it live, I was scoring rounds, and I was saying, I don't know if the guy that I just wrote down on my little notepad, I'm not sure if he actually won that round. It was one of those fights where,
right.
I'm watching the first two rounds, and I'm seeing both guys do some good work. And I scored the first two rounds for Taylor and just made a little note by it. Put an asterisk, or maybe in parentheses I put very close, And then the third round for Prograis. And then, I tweeted out, hey, I've got Taylor up 2-1. But like a lot of these 50-50 type fights where you have the two best fighters in a division, and especially a title unification fight, it's hotly contested, and Prograis could easily be up 2-1 after three rounds. But I wanted to go back and watch those rounds again. And sure enough, watching the first two rounds again, I'm thinking to myself, what? I think maybe Prograis got a little bit more done in there. He was the more consistent fighter. To me, he was working more for 3 minutes of those rounds. You know what I mean? I don't know if he did more damage. Obviously, Taylor looked really good in spots, and that carried the rounds for him on my card, my very unofficial card, while watching it live. But at the end of 12 rounds, watching it live, I had Taylor up 8 rounds to 4. But I always keep in mind those swing rounds, So if an official judge has 114, I'm not going to call that a bad card, because that easily could have been my card. And there was another round, as a matter of fact, that I thought, now I scored for Taylor, that I thought easily could have gone Prograis' way. So even if you had Prograis up 7 rounds to 5, I can't get mad at you. And sometimes in boxing, we have these type of fights where guys they're complete fighters, and they're all in, and they're ready to give 100%. And every round is close, and it comes down to what you like. You might choose volume over punch accuracy or power. You might choose defense over ring generalship. You might favor the guy coming forward more than the guy who's backing up, but is still defensively responsible and counterpunching and that sort of thing. So they're hard to score, and sometimes there isn't a correct scorecard. Sometimes there's going to be a spectrum, and a lot of fans can't accept that. But I mean, we had it. I thought we had it with Gennady Golovkin and Sergey Derevyanchenko. This past Thursday with the main event with Soto and Heno, I thought that fight could have been closer than the official judges had it, because Heno was getting a lot of good work done, even as Soto was pressing him to the ropes and loading up with these big, eye-catching headshots. But Heno was dropping these combinations to the body and the head, and he was snapping Soto's head back with these uppercuts on the inside that maybe the official judges couldn't see, given their vantage point. So you got to keep this stuff in mind. But, regardless of who you thought won, Prograis, Taylor, to me, it was boxing at its best, because you had the 2 best fighters in the division, and they are complete boxers/fighters, meaning they're technical, and they can fight coming forward, they can fight backing up, they can fight inside, they can fight on the outside. They're effective from any range, anywhere in that ring, but they're also fighters. They're going to give you their heart. And it reminded me of the 2007 junior lightweight title fight between Marco Antonio Barrera and Juan Manuel Marquez. And these guys were at the top of their game. Maybe Barrera was a little bit past his prime, but he had matured into this masterful boxer counterpuncher. And he was faced with the ultra counterpuncher technician who's also aggressive-minded. And he brought out the warrior in Marco Antonio Barrera. And I remember being ringside for that show in Las Vegas, and the rounds seemed like they were 1 minute. I mean, it was almost like it was so good, I wanted to savor the fight more. But each guy was doing so much in every round that the minutes just flew by. So it seemed like they were 1 minute rounds, and before we knew it, the fight was over. And it was brilliant. And most of folks on press row had Juan Manuel Marquez winning a close fight, very close. I think the official scorecards were all for Marquez, and it was comfortable. And I believe the folks on HBO thought that Marco Antonio Barrera deserved it. But it was just one of those fights. But I mean, I don't get caught up when a fight is that good. At some point, I don't care who wins it. I'm just totally into the fight. And Prograis versus Taylor was one of those fights.
It was definitely a compelling fight from start to finish. Do you think we'll see Josh Taylor against Jose Ramirez in 2020?
I do, because what else would Taylor do as the Ring Magazine partially unified junior welterweight champion? He has 2 belts. Jose Ramirez has two belts. An interesting thing about both Prograis and Ramirez is they won WBC title elimination bouts. So they had the ticket to fight Jose Ramirez, but both of them said, okay, I'm going to wait on this, because they were invited to take part in the World Boxing Super Series. And I think both guys believed that they had the ability to win that fight. And I think both guys believed that if and when they win the World Boxing Super Series, their stature in the sport is going to raise, and then they can fight Ramirez, because it'll be a much bigger fight. And maybe, and they assume correctly, all the marbles will be on the line. It'll be for the whole enchilada, as they say out here in America. And So I think in the back of both minds, both Prograis and Taylor, and I know this especially with Team Prograis, they were thinking about fighting Ramirez in 2020, and I think the same goes for Josh Taylor. I mean, his promoter is a former champion. His promoter is Barry McGuigan, and McGuigan is an old school guy, and they're not about avoiding challenges. You know what I mean? They want to fight the best. They want to unify titles. They want an undisputed champion. And obviously they believe in Josh Taylor. I mean, look at what Josh Taylor has done with 16 professional fights. We're talking about a guy who turned pro in 2015, in July of 2015. So he's accomplished what he has. He's fought who he's fought in just 4.5 years. So obviously they believe in Taylor. They're not going to cherry pick with him.
Do you think we'll see another series of the World Boxing Super Series next year? Because obviously this year it was on and off, and fights getting delayed, and rumors of them not having much money.
I think we will. I think maybe if you had asked the people, the organizers of the World Boxing Super Series, 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, are you up for doing this in 2020? Some of them might have said, no, it's too much of a headache. It's crazy. This sport is difficult, But, now that we're into the finals, the payoff is so huge. The eyes of the world is on their promotion and their product, which is that Muhammad Ali trophy, and their in-arena production and the fact that they're making stars. You know what I mean? They're taking a Naoya Inoue and bringing him into the pound for pound conversation. Whereas before he was hardcore fans knew who he was. He was a star in Japan. He was somebody that you thought, oh, I hope he fights somebody like Sri Suketsu or Rungvisai or whatever. But now they're talking about pound for pound, and now people are talking about Inoue fighting Vasily Lomachenko, at some catchweight, and I think the Super Series, the results in the Super Series have pushed his name out there. Super Series gave us Alexander Usyk. Obviously, Josh Taylor is now one of the brightest. He's recognized as one of the brightest talents in the UK. He could become a star in the UK. Right now, he's a star in Scotland. But I think the fight that he put on and the guy that he beat and the class that they showed after that fight, I think folks in England, they're going to embrace him as well. So they see these results, the organizers of the WBSS, and I think it makes them want to continue. And I think this year was, it was a learning experience for them. And maybe what we might see more of next year is the World Boxing Super Series partnering up with certain prominent promoters like Eddie Hearn. I think having Eddie Hearn help them with that show in London this past Saturday, I think it helped the show. It helped fill out the undercard, and then they have extra resources with Matchroom. And so maybe that's something that they do in other parts of the world. Maybe partner up with a Taken Boxing in Japan, or partner up with Top Rank or Golden Boy or a major promoter in the United States for some of the shows they do out here. And maybe they bring more of this action to the U.S. And get the attention of the large platforms, whether it's the Zone, if they stick with the Zone, or maybe they go with an ESPN or Showtime or who knows, maybe Fox or whatever, or maybe they find a different TV partner. But I think they're going to stick with it. I think we're going to at least get a third season.
I'll be honest, I did miss the light show. I used to know it was the World Boxing Super Series when it used to have those lights outside the ring.
Yeah, that ring. Yeah. We didn't have that, right? We didn't have that this Saturday.
No, exactly, because it was on Sky Sports. Like you said, it was a Matchroom show. We didn't get that, that unique light show that we used to get. You used to know, like, it's a World Boxing Super Series.
That was cool last year. I'm over it now. Now I just want the right fights to happen. I want a good finals. And you know what? We were lucky. We were treated to good semifinals in both the bantamweight and the junior welterweight. And you know what? Even the cruiserweight, the semifinals were pretty good. And I think, we're not talking about it, but I think the cruiserweight final between Dorticos and Breedis. I think that'll be fun. So, and in fact, it might crown another Ring Magazine cruiserweight, because we had to vacate the cruiserweight championship that Usyk held, because he's definitely staying at heavyweight now. So, I think Breedis and Dorticos are the top two cruiserweights.
Moving on to this past weekend's grudge match from Reno on ESPN, we had Shakur move to 13-0, unanimous decision over Joet Gonzalez for the vacant WBO featherweight. Did you get a chance to catch that, Dougie?
Oh yeah, I watched it live. Like I said, it was this was a very busy weekend of boxing. For me, it started on Thursday, and Saturday was, I was watching boxing all day and posting stories, editing stories, posting stuff up, pinning quickies. I pinned a little quick results on Prograis Taylor, while Tom Gray, who was covering the fight live for us in London, wrote up his post-fight report and all that good stuff. And I was flipping back and forth between the ESPN show, and which I watched on ESPN Plus, and the Showtime card. So I was watching Erickson Lubin and Robert Easter Jr. and just going back and forth. But definitely, I was dialed in from the first round to the end of the fight with the Shakur Stevenson fight. Although, quite frankly, it became monotonous because it was a virtuoso performance from Shakur Stevenson. He just totally outclassed Joet Gonzalez. To me, Gonzalez won one round. He showed some desperation in round 7, let his hands go. I think Shakur elected to take that round off, kind of just gave Gonzalez that round, and then went right back to his game plan, effectively handcuffing Gonzalez, befuddling Gonzalez. And like we're all saying, he outclassed him, and he won the WBO featherweight title. And he's a worthy title holder. Prior to this fight, I was saying, people need to slow their roll on talking about this kid as being like a future pound-for-pound entrant. And I still think that. I don't think beating Joet Gonzalez is any indication of somebody having elite boxer potential. But the kid does pass the eye test. And he did beat a fellow young, hungry, undefeated contender, and he won a vacant world title. So to talk about him fighting world champions, I used to poo-poo that. So yeah, let the kid develop a little bit more. Not anymore. The form he showed against Gonzalez, the fact that he himself is a world title holder, I'm saying, okay, take the training wheels off. If they want to make Shakur Stevenson versus Josh Warrington next, go for it. I'm into that fight. I'm into that matchup.
Do you think that for Joet, Dougie, because obviously he's been trained by his father, do you think after, getting to this level and obviously, in a losing effort in a world title fight here, do you think it's time to maybe change up to a different trainer, get away from his dad?
I don't like doing that. I don't like suggesting that just because a fighter takes a loss that they automatically have to change trainers. And I joke about this a lot. I say, if Twitter was around when, in 1981, immediately after the Sugar Ray Leonard Tommy Hearns fight, people would be saying that Tommy Hearns needs to dump Emmanuel Stewart. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of crazy. It's like people can't accept a loss, but I do get the feeling that Joet's father has kind of hit his ceiling as a professional. I think he did a great job with his son and his other children at the amateur level. And I think he's done a great job in developing them to this point, but maybe to go beyond this point, to go beyond being a prospect or a lower top 10 or 15 contender, they might need to bring a more seasoned, proven world-class trainer in. They don't necessarily have to get rid of the father, but they might need, a little more experience in the corner and a little more knowledge. Because from my perspective, it seemed to me that Joet and his father were overwhelmed by the drama and the build-up to this fight. It's like they couldn't handle the exposure and the platform and the magnitude, along with that family drama, that soap opera that involved Joet's sister. And to me, that smacked a little bit of unprofessionalism. To me, that smacked a little bit of immaturity for both men, because it really seemed to me like Joet entered that ring flustered already. Like he was too keyed up. He was too emotional. He was too tense. He was too tight. And that's a bad thing to be against a fighter as talented and skilled as Shakur Stevenson. So I didn't like the way they handled that. You know, it was their first rodeo. And maybe we should give them another chance. But if there are problems, if the father has hit his limit as a professional trainer, or if he needs some education by being around a more experienced trainer, I think they need to do that. I think they need to do that in the interest in Joet Gonzalez' career.
Some interesting statistics to come out of that weekend's fight was Stevenson won a featherweight world title in the second fewest fights in boxing history, only behind Vasyl Lomachenko, and he was also the first 2016 male Olympian to claim a world title.
Yeah, no, the kid's a blue chipper. There's no doubt about that. I mean, like I said, if you were at the World Amateur Championship level or the Olympic level as an amateur, that makes you, one of the best amateurs in the world. That makes you a blue chipper as an amateur, and people are going to view you as a blue chipper the moment you turn pro. They're going to hold you to a higher standard, and in most cases, you can be moved a lot quicker than your regular prospect. And that's proving to be the case with Shakur Stevenson. It's not always the case. Sometimes the Olympic medalist or the world amateur champion lacks the discipline and they don't pan out. Or sometimes they lack, like I was talking to you about earlier, sometimes they lack the chin or the durability to transition into the professional ranks where you're going to go more rounds and there's more emphasis on hard punching, sitting down on your punches. But Stevenson seems, he seemed big for the weight too. He didn't seem like just your average featherweight. I mean, he at least looked like a big junior lightweight. Honestly, he kind of had like a lightweight frame. Mm-hmm. So, that may be, and he's also maturing. I think physically, if you looked at Shakur Stevenson 2 years ago, he didn't look like he had, fully matured as a man. And now he's looking like a strong young athlete. So, I mean, that speaks to, perhaps he's physically built. He can get in there with a grinder like Josh Warrington, and he'll be okay if Warrington can get past his jab and can cut the ring off. You know what I mean? But the way his skills looked against Joet Gonzalez, it makes you think it's going to be very hard to find this kid because he is such a disciplined boxer. And unlike Joet Gonzalez, he proved to be mature. He proved to be psychologically ready to step his career into its second phase. He seems ready for the 12-round distance and that title as champion.
Dougie, Mike mentioned Vasyl Lomachenko, and then obviously, a big topic in the boxing world right now is that the whole issue behind the WBC franchise title, franchise champion that Lomachenko was actually just elevated to. What's your take on that situation?
I don't really care. I don't understand all the angst and the outrage and the condemnation. And I mean, I hear people saying, "Well, that's it. I'm done with the WBC." And I'm like, "Really? This is what did it?" I mean, they've had diamond belts, they've had silver belts, they've had pearl belts, they got youth titles, they've got champion in recess, they've got champion emeritus, they've got all kind of belts. They've got a belt for all seasons. Literally, they've got belts for holidays. They've got the Cinco de Mayo belt. They got the Mayan belt. They've got, a plethora of regional titles, and minor titles and that kind of thing. Continental Americas, Latino, or, Latin Americas, whatever, what have you. I don't know why the franchise belt is the deal breaker. And I think, people are, so it was Canelo who they first awarded it, and now they're awarding it to Lomachenko. And the immediate reaction is, well, this means that, Canelo, because they say they don't have to fight the mandatories because it's like really like an honorary thing or whatever. And whoever has the interim belt becomes the full WBC champion. So they're saying, well, this means that the WBC will never force Canelo to fight Jermall Charlo, And the bottom line on that is nobody can force Canelo to do anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
And now with Lomachenko, they're saying, well, this means the WBC can't enforce Lomachenko to fight Devin Haney. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, hold on, guys. We're talking about Vasily Lomachenko, who, like Canelo, seems to be one of these fighters that wants to test himself, okay? It's not like they're fighting chumps. Yeah, Canelo will fight a Rocky Fielding, but, after Rocky Fielding, he'll fight a Danny Jacobs, you know what I mean? And after a Jacobs, he'll fight a Sergey Kovalev, you know what I mean? These aren't easy fights. He's challenging himself. And before Rocky Fielding, he fought Gennady Golovkin. So I don't know what the worry is. I mean, it's not like he's avoiding hard fights. And to me, that's especially true for Vasily Lomachenko. I mean, his first fight as a lightweight was the Ring Magazine champion. It was Jorge Linares. I mean, that's an experienced, big, talented lightweight. And it was a sensational fight. It was a competitive fight. He got dropped, but he beats Linares, stops Linares, fights through an injury. He wins the Ring Magazine title. He wins the WBA lightweight title. And his first title defense is against the WBA lightweight title holder, Jose Pedraza. And then his fight after that is, it's Corolla, because he has to fight Corolla because Corolla is a WBA mandatory. But right after Corolla, it's Luke Campbell, a fellow Olympic champion, a tall, rangy southpaw with a difficult style. And he travels to London. He travels to the UK to fight an English fighter who won his Olympic gold medal at the London Games in 2012. You know what I mean? And the vacant WBC title is on the line in that fight. And we know his next fight is going to be against the winner of Richard Comey and Teofimo Lopez for the IBF title. We know his goal is to unify world titles. So what are we worried about? Like, why are we concerned? Like, why are we all angst-ridden? Like, oh man, why are we jumping to all these conclusions when the man has proven that all he wants to do is fight the best fighters in his division? And why are we in such a hurry for Lomachenko to fight Devin Haney, who's 20 years old, who, like a Shakur Stevenson, passes the eye test? Yes, he's marvelously talented. Yes, he's fun to watch. Yes, he wants to fight Lomachenko. He wants to fight everybody. But guess what? To this point, I don't think Devin Haney has fought a legitimate top 10 lightweight. Am I wrong about that?
No, I agree.
I mean,
the last guy that he fought, I mean, was that guy ranked by Ring Magazine or ESPN.com or the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board?
He was not.
I don't think so.
He was not.
And I don't think any of those other guys were. I mean, and I'm not trying to put down Devin Haney. He's only 20. I mean, he's fought really good fighters for his age and for his experience level. And he's a prodigy. He's amazing in the ring. But his time will come. I mean, he's 20 years old. I don't see what the huge rush is. I guess maybe the rush is people are thinking he's going to outgrow the 135-pound division. And Lomachenko has said, hey, I've hit my ceiling at lightweight. I'm not going up to junior welterweight. If anything, I'll go down in weight after I unify all the major titles at lightweight. So they're thinking, okay, if it doesn't happen soon, it won't happen. But I mean, even if Devin Haney goes up in weight, so what? So fight Josh Taylor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So fight Regis Prograis. Fight Jose Ramirez. It's not like there aren't worthy fighters at 140 pounds. There's great fights at 140 pounds. Teofimo Lopez is probably headed to 140 pounds. I mean, there's great fights to be made. I don't know why people. I mean, I think some people who were complaining about the WBC awarding the franchise belt to Lomachenko, they just don't like Lomachenko. They just want to find a reason to bitch about him.
Right.
And that's, what are you going to do? That's boxing.
Absolutely. And then,
it's boxing fandom.
Exactly. Especially like you mentioned in this Twitter age. If Twitter was around back in the day, it'd be a totally different story.
Yep.
Going to the Saturday, obviously it's a big card again on DAZN. Canelo Alvarez goes up against Sergey Kovalev, making his debut at 175 pounds for the WBO light heavyweight title. Just right off the bat, what's your take?
I think it's tough. I think that's listen. It's a very rare move for middleweights when you think about it. I mean, we've had great middleweights who never even attempted it. Marvelous Marvin Hagler never even thought about it. And he had kind of a similar build as Canelo Alvarez, a short, compact guy, 5'8", and Carlos Monzon actually had the bone structure, the frame for light heavyweight, 6 foot tall, long arms, and strong too, strong with a great chin, just like Hagler. He never went up to 175 pounds. It's very, the last time a reigning middleweight champion went to light heavyweight to fight a reigning light heavyweight champion was in 1952, and that was Sugar Ray Robinson. And the combination of being in against Joey Maxim, who was a big, brute, strong light heavyweight, and the sweltering heat, and it being, an outdoor fight, it caught up with him. And that was the only time Sugar Ray Robinson was ever stopped in 200 professional fights. So it's not easy. If the late great Sugar Ray Robinson wasn't able to do it, that tells you something. And when you look at the modern middleweight champions who have won world titles at light heavyweight, like Tommy Hearns and Roy Jones Jr., they were big. Like Tommy Hearns is tall. He's taller than 6 foot, and he had like a 78-inch wingspan. He had the long arms. Obviously, he had incredible punching power. He was a knockout artist at welterweight and at junior middleweight, and he carried that power up to middleweight. But when he fought Dennis Andres, and he got the knockout against Dennis Andres, and Andres not looked at as like an elite level boxer or a top light heavyweight champion, but it was hard. That weight and the brute strength of Dennis Andres, it was difficult for Hearns. And Hearns scored knockdowns, and he eventually got the stoppage, I think, in the 10th round. But it wasn't easy. And the second time Tommy Hearns won a light heavyweight world title, he had to settle for a decision over Virgil Hill. And Roy Jones Jr., a big, strong, incredibly athletically gifted middleweight, explosive, even at 168 pounds, where he was probably at his peak. We've never seen that blend of speed and power and fluidity and explosive and his ability to immediately hurt a guy and overwhelm him just like that in the blink of an eye. We had never seen that. And when he stepped up just from 168 to 175, he wasn't able to knock these guys out. When he fought for his first light heavyweight title, he was fighting an old man. He was fighting Mike McCallum, who, like him, had come from the later weight classes. Mike McCallum started out at junior middleweight, and he wasn't able to knock out Mike McCallum. Now, granted, Mike McCallum has one of the greatest chins of all time. But when he fought Reggie Johnson, also another guy who started at middleweight, he could drop Reggie Johnson, but he couldn't stop Reggie Johnson. Man, they were fighting at 175. And then when he unified all these belts, when he fought, remember Honey Boy Del Valle?
Mm-hmm.
Lou Del Valle? So Lou Del Valle, out of the Bronx, he was the only natural light heavyweight that Roy Jones fought for the world title. I think the WBA title was on the line in that fight. And Roy wasn't able to hurt him or knock him down. In fact, Roy Jones is the guy who got dropped in that fight. Now, he won handily. He won the fight because Roy was a brilliant boxer, even though he had his own style, even though he didn't adhere to textbook technique. But my point is, a huge, marvelously gifted middleweight like Roy Jones Jr., who could decapitate guys at 160 and even at 168, wasn't able to blast guys out, wasn't able to score those sensational knockouts at light heavyweight. An exception would be the one-hitter quitter body shot against Virgil Hill. But, so it's what Canelo Alvarez, who doesn't have the frame of a Tommy Hearns or a Roy Jones and isn't as athletically gifted, it's a big deal for him to go from 160 to 175, because in Sergey Kovalev, he's not fighting a Rocky Fielding type. He's fighting a guy who I think everybody recognizes as like a top 3 light heavyweight. And people who were saying Sergey Kovalev is past his prime, well, yeah, he's not the crusher anymore. He's in his mid-30s now. He's not what he was 4 or 5 years ago. But, you can't call him a shot fighter. You can't call him faded. If he was faded, he that would have been exposed against the leader Alvarez in his first fight of this year. That would have been exposed against a big, strong, confident guy like Anthony Yarde. I'm seeing Sergey Kovalev get back to basics. I think there's good chemistry with Kovalev and Buddy McGirt. The jab is still world class. He can still punch. But I'm just saying I don't see this as an easy fight for Canelo Alvarez. And I got to wonder about, all the folks that are pulling the matchup. I got to wonder if it's just not some kind of hate. Either it's hate for Canelo or hate for Golden Boy or hate for Kovalev, because all three entities have their share of haters.
Dougie, if you were Eddie Reynoso, what would you tell Canelo, like tactically, how to win this fight?
Everyone says all you got to do is tap Kovalev to the body, and he's going to evaporate in a big puff of smoke. I wouldn't count on that. I wouldn't believe that. But a good body attack that's advantageous for any fighter, and in any matchup. So to me, it would all be about neutralizing that jab. It would all be about flipping the jab, but also Canelo's got to get his own jab off. And I would want to be faster. I would want to be more nimble. I'd want to be able to move around if necessary. But the first order of business would be to get some respect and to affect the confidence of Kovalev. And that's get inside the distance, tap the body, but tap the head too. Combination punching. I think Canelo Alvarez is one of the best combination punchers in boxing. He doesn't always do it because he's very good at flipping punches, flipping and countering. Sometimes he flips and doesn't make his opponent pay. I think we saw that against Danny Jacobs. And sometimes he'll flip a punch or a bunch of punches and only throw one punch in return. I think he needs to return fire in combination. So I think flipping the jab, getting his own jab off, closing the distance, working the body, yes, but not, it's not all about the body. Work that head and body in combination and break the big man down. He might not break him down. I mean, Canelo Alvarez hasn't knocked out a world-class middleweight. So I don't know if he can knock out a world-class light heavyweight. That remains to be seen.
And the reverse of that, what if you were Buddy McGirt, what would you tell Kovalev? Because there's only been one person so far, obviously Floyd Mayweather, that's managed to beat Canelo.
Yeah, and the jab was his key punch. And Arislandi Lara's jab worked very well against Alvarez. Some people thought the Cuban deserved to win that fight. I think Gennady Golovkin's jab worked very well against Canelo Alvarez in both fights. In the second fight, which was legitimately close, it could have been a draw as I scored it. It could have been 7-5 for either middleweight. But if you want to give an edge to Gennady Golovkin in that rematch, it was the jab. He's always able to, he's able to outwork Canelo by constantly pumping that jab in Canelo's face. So obviously it's all about the jab. Get that jab off, soften Canelo up with the jab. But don't be shy about letting the right hand go and working the body as well. I think, everyone's talking about Kovalev's body. I'm not saying that Canelo can't take a body shot or block and counter a body shot. But we see he's got very good head movement, doesn't he? He has very good head and upper body movement. So I would land, when I'm talking about body shots, I'm not talking about the Mexican left hook to the liver. Use your height and your range, throw straight rights to the body, jab to the body. And by the body, I'm talking about the chest. I'm talking about the stomach because, as we all know, Canelo Alvarez can make you miss. He moves that head very well, very good at anticipating punches, and he's got very good reflexes. So even when the head is moving, the body stays still. So aim at the chest and do that.
And then
but come forward. Definitely come forward. Don't give him confidence.
Absolutely. It's definitely an intriguing fight. One of the most, if not the most intriguing fight of the year. And then also, if you can briefly touch on and give us your take on Ryan Garcia, who's the co-main event, who goes up against Romero-Duno. Obviously this is a step up for Garcia. They were trying to make this fight a few months ago. What's your take on this matchup?
I think it's a dangerous fight. I think if Ryan Garcia is dialed in, if he's at a really good camp, if he listens to Eddie Reynoso and he sticks to the boxing basics, because he's taller, he's rangier. Duno is fast, but Garcia is faster. So I think if he works everything off his jab, doesn't get too greedy, and utilizes lateral movement, he can outbox Duno. Duno runs out of ideas. He's got a lot of heart. He's got really good power. And like I said, he's fast and athletic, and he's very motivated for this fight. He feels like he's the more mature fighter and the more battle-tested fighter, and he might be right about that. One thing about Duno, the last time he fought, it was on a Thursday Night Fights card, and I'm thinking of the name of the Mexican gatekeeper that he fought. I think the last name was Rodriguez, maybe Jose Antonio Rodriguez, a southpaw, but kind of a rangy dude, had a nice jab. And he was busting up Duno, and he was giving Duno a hard time. And they were going back and forth, but Duno was getting backed up, and he seemed a little bit befuddled by the boxing ability of the Mexican gatekeeper. But Duno doesn't give up. He keeps swinging, and he's pretty good to the body. And a body shot turned that fight in the 8th round. So he still had the wherewithal to land that punch, and there was still power on that punch going into the late round. And so that body shot sent the Mexican down to a knee, and it kind of turned the tide of the fight, took the wind out of the gatekeeper's sails. And, then he busted up the face. And I think the cut was deemed due to a headbutt. So they went to the scorecards, and Duno won like an 11-round technical decision, or maybe a 10-round technical decision. But it looked like Duno was on his way to a stoppage. So he's somebody who retains his power late in a fight, and that's dangerous for Ryan Garcia, because Ryan Garcia is used to shining early in a fight, and he's so fast with his punches. He catches guys with blind shots and either takes them out or bewilders them. They don't see the shot coming. They get hurt. They get dropped, and they get up and they're not themselves, and he's able to overwhelm them. But if you can take him past 6 rounds, I think things get tough for Garcia. And I do think his speed drops off a little more over the second half of a fight. So I think Duno's going to be dangerous in this fight if he can get out of 5 or 6 rounds. And if he does, I think he'll test Ryan Garcia. And that's fair. Ryan Garcia is getting paid a lot of money. He's in the co-feature to a huge fight. And he should be in tough. And it should be a competitive fight.
It's going to be interesting, Dougie, because you can see that Ryan still has some flaws. He kind of keeps his chin up in the air, kind of still very robotic. Yep. And it's going to be the first time, I think.
I pointed that out on undercard streams a couple of years ago, and I incurred the wrath of the King Rai army. They don't take criticism very well. Well, whatever. I mean, I wasn't saying it to be mean. I was saying it because I'm a commentator, and that was my job along with Beto Duran. And when we point these things out, especially with young up-and-comers, is because we hope they correct those mistakes. I think he's trying to correct it a little bit. I think he's tucking it a little bit more behind his shoulder. He's chucking it in a little bit more. But, he's a straight-up. He's a tall guy, and he likes to fight and box tall. So the chin will be in the air, especially if he's reaching down on a shorter opponent.
It's going to be interesting because, obviously, Duno's, I would say, the first person he's ever really faced that's got a punch.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good way. His other step-up fights, I think there was Carlos Morales, there was Jason Velez, and they took him the distance.
Right.
And they gave him, his difficulties in spots at least, but they weren't punchers, were they? Yeah, Duno's a puncher. There's no doubt about it. And he's got that Filipino fighting spirit too. He's got a lot of heart.
And another thing I also noticed is he kind of, and Michaela Mayo was doing it on the weekend. Sometimes when he throws a punch, he closes his eyes.
Hey, I'm sorry, Mike. Can you repeat that?
Ryan Garcia does something which Tim Bradley was pointing out on the weekend that Michaela Mayo was doing. That when he throws a punch, sometimes he closes his eyes.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah, I've seen that. Some fighters do that and they can get away with it. I think Prime Roy Jones did that. He would be loading up with like 4 consecutive left hooks. And you'd notice his eye in slow motion because he was so damn fast. his eyes were closed while he was loading up with these hooks, and they were finding the mark. Some people are talented enough to get away with it. Others aren't. I don't know if Ryan Garcia is. We'll find out if that's a habit that he keeps. But you're right about that. I've noticed that. Now that you pointed out, I have noticed that in the past.
Well, like you said, I guess we'll find out this Saturday. There's definitely the co-main and the main event, and then there's other fights on there that we didn't get to, but it's definitely an intriguing card this Saturday. And Dougie,
it'll be fun.
We want to just thank you for coming on because we know it's been a busy month for boxing, a busy year for boxing, and obviously, in your capacity and your role, you're just as busy as anybody is in the sport. So we want to thank you again for jumping on this week's episode and helping us review and preview the fights. If you want to go ahead and plug your Twitter, Instagram, the ring, go for it. The floor is yours.
No, well, folks know where to find me. I'm on Ring TV. You want to send an email for the mailbag. That email is, gosh, I should know this off the top of my head. It's Dougie at boxingmailbag.com. I'm on Twitter at Dougie Fischer. It's DougieFischer, and it's the same. It's the same for Instagram at Dougie Fischer, and I think the same for Periscope too. So, but just follow me on Twitter. That's my main social media outlet, and you can @ me anytime.
Oh, I'm sure you get added all the time, Dougie. I'm sure you do.
I do. Not always friendly @ too, but it's all good. I love the haters. I love them.
Well, once again, Dougie, we thank you for jumping on this weekend, and good luck in with everything going on with the ring, and then your commentating career. We're looking forward to everything you're coming up with.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Danny.
You're welcome. You take care, Dougie. So once again, Mike, like we mentioned earlier, big thanks to Dougie Fischer, who, like we said, is the encyclopedia in this sport. Honestly, I don't know who anybody else is who knows more about this sport than he does. What do you think?
No, I would agree with that. He's a boxing historian, as they say, source of all knowledge. So it was great, a real catch for us, really, to get him on before such a big fight week.
No, absolutely. Yeah, man. I mean, you heard all the little tidbits he dropped throughout all his analysis of each of the questions that we had, and I think that's great. That I mean, I'm sure there's other people in the sport who know tidbits like that, but he just knows them like off the top of his head, like so easily. It's great to hear.
He'll name a fighter in the year, like when he played about 1952, was it Sugar Ray? So it was just amazing. You could sit and talk to him for hours. Absolutely.
And like we mentioned earlier, guys, Mike and I will be at the Top Rank on ESPN card this Saturday in Los Angeles at the Dignity Health Sports Park, formerly the StubHub Center. So if you see us there, come say hi. We will be planning on doing a live show there, recording a show there, so hopefully we can grab one of the fighters or somebody in attendance to jump on. Mike, go ahead. Where can they follow us?
At The Last Round 12 on Twitter and Instagram, and be sure to join us next week so we can review the huge Canelo v. Kovalev fight.
Yeah, this is an intriguing card this weekend. So once again, guys, thank you again for listening to episode 54 of The Last Round. I'm Danny Z. For my co-host, Michael Shepard, this is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.